This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
The first step required to change something is to bring awareness to it. Then we can bring some choice around how we act. There's a lot of unconscious shame around our disavowed feminine qualities and longing to reconnect to something we often can't even name. By naming it, normalizing the experience and understanding that this is part of the heroine's journey, we can start to release that shame and empower ourselves to take action to reclaim our full femininity. Valeria interviews Nathalie Cordell. She is an accredited transformational coach with an MA in Psychosynthesis leadership and organizational coaching. After a 20-plus year successful career in a global pharmaceutical company, she now runs her own business, Cordell Coaching. As a coach and facilitator, she is passionate about helping professional women in midlife reclaim their feminine wisdom and power so they can blossom into their full, authentic self-expression. Her thesis, The Wounded Feminine, explores how the imbalance we see in the world reflects our systemic devaluation of feminine qualities and how restoring the balance starts with doing our own inner work. Meet Natalie at cordellcoaching.com. Here's the interview with Nathalie Cordell.
In your own words, who is Nathalie Cordell as of now?
Yeah, I love that question because it's a lifelong journey, really, to discover who you really are. And I think the more you think you know, the less you do.
Yes.
And the more you try and put words on it, the more you go away from the actual essence. So, at some level, at a deep down level, I think I'm a sort of a flavor of something that's very hard to put words on. That's to do with love, an expression of love. But on the, at the intellectual level, I identify with many things. So I'm a wife, a mother. I'm a investigator. I'm curious about things, and that journey has led me to become to study psychosynthesis and become a psychosynthesis leadership coach. And I'm also a business owner. So I run my own business as a leadership coach.
Wow, we have a lot to talk when it comes to what you do and the perspectives you have as of today as well. I have all those questions here that I'll be asking you in a moment about midlife awakening and the wounded feminine, the heroine's journey, and so many other, questions that I have here for you on that topic. But before that, the second question is about mental health. How do you define what that is?
I think that's the word that we use today, and that's kind of the acceptable word. I don't actually like the word, mostly because the opposite of health is often seen as disease, and
Yes,
there can be sort of stigma around it. I sometimes prefer calling something mental fitness. So I think there's something around, for me, the biggest, actually one of the book that completely transformed my life, that was that I remember reading and feeling so different after I read it, was called The Power of Now. And the way he puts his book by Eckhart Tolle, and he's talking about the disease is actually the fact that we are identified with the mind. So for me, mental health is more around actually us controlling our mind rather than our mind controlling us, realizing that we are not our mind, we are not our thoughts. But often we let the mind run away with us and kind of go on autopilot, and that's what can manifest as mental unease, I guess.
Wow, I never had somebody answer that question this way, which is, it's you answered beautifully in a very clear way, right? We're not the mind, we're not the body, we're not our thoughts, that's for sure. Yes, well, let me actually go back. Talk to me about the exploration of psychosynthesis, leadership coaching. How was the transition between what you did before? And I think you worked in pharmaceuticals before.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. So how did that feel? Was it calling? Do you feel like there was a purpose? What was the journey like? And what do you call that? Is there something spiritual, actually, spiritual calling or something else?
Yeah, so I'm one of these person that never knew what she wanted to do. And I was always so envious of people who, from the very young age say, I want to be a doctor or a dancer. And they're just, and it shows in every fiber of their being, they know. And that was never me. And so I feel like I've spent my whole life looking for who I was or what I wanted to do, what was my calling. To the point where I thought, I was thinking, am I ever going to find it? And I feel like the psychosynthesis was really the answer. So I just sort of I did follow my heart in a way, what I'm good at, what I like, but there was never this sort of feeling of, oh yeah, this is really what I'm passionate about. And I always liked, I liked science, and I also liked languages and writing. So there was almost a bit of a split in me, and well, not really a split, but I guess where I was brought up in the traditional, world, when you have to, if you're academic, you sort of have to make choices, and there seemed to be the split. You're either scientific or you're more into arts and things like this. And I chose the scientific route, and so that's how I ended up working in pharmaceuticals. Really, and that did answer something. I ended up there a little bit by accident, but I stayed for a reason, because it did line up with my values of working to make the world a better place through helping make people better through medicine. So, there was definitely an alignment with my values, and I carried on working, and I learned lots of things. I think, often the first part of life is about kind of learning your craft, learning who you are, and having experiences that you only know later, why they were useful. So, but I was always, I always was looking for more. I think I'm one of these people that just always looks for more. I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm always, thinking about what's next. When things get comfortable, I look for more. So around, and this did correspond with my own midlife, approaching 40, maybe even before this, the discomfort starts to get even bigger. And I just thought, I can't pretend. I can't pretend that I'm happy with just carrying on, going to work, getting paid. That I need to be passionate about what I do. And when I started to not feel the passion, I was questioning what's next, and didn't really know what next was. So it's sort of, a long story. People sort of I met some people, I had coaching at work, and one of them mentioned psychosynthesis. And when I read about it, it was just, for me, it felt like, it really hit me. I was thinking, finally, there are words to make sense of how I feel inside. I'm not crazy. I am not mad for wanting more and questioning, the world that we live in. And so that was the beginning of my journey. And for me, training as a psychosynthesis leadership coach is about a 3 years, 3-year journey of training. But it sort of feels like it was a lifetime up till that point.
Yes. Wow. And then, of course, I have to ask you this question now, the audience too. That's when I saw the term that I had to learn more. So what is psychosynthesis in your own words? And I know that's something that's already out there, but how do you interpret it?
Yeah, but it's not many people know about it. I mean, I didn't know about it until somebody pointed me to it, and I'm still wondering why it's not that more well known. Um, it's a it's a psychology of, you could call it by many names, psychology of hope, psychology of the spirit, psychospiritual psychology. It was developed by a Italian psychiatrist called Roberto Assagioli around similar time as Carl Jung. Lots of people have heard of Carl Jung, but not so much of Assagioli. And it's very similar. So it's really unlike psychoanalysis that just sort of reduces all our experiences to sort of almost like mammalian needs. Psychosynthesis really puts the self at the center of its sort of model of psychology. So, in essence, the core foundation of psychosynthesis is we are a spark of spirit. That's in all of us. That spark of spirit that we call self with a big S is always there. Even before we are born. And that self is always forever seeking greater, more full expression of itself. But it does this via the ego, the person, the little s, the small self. And this is sort of the almost like the frame. It sort of becomes a way through which you see the world. But around it, there's a lots of tools and models that Assagioli developed around then applying this to actually dealing with I don't want to call them mental illness. He was a psychiatrist, so I guess a lot of his work is applied to therapy. But it's really looking at some of the what might be called even by modern time now mental illness. Actually wondering what is this? There's something that's trying to emerge here. There's a function to this, and sometimes what happens, and when this effectively this urge, it's like an urge for life. If you look in nature, nature grows. The tree grows, grass grows. You can't, there's a pull for life that's in everything around us, and we have that same pull, except as humans, that pull sometimes gets distorted or gets blocked because of our experiences, or and that's what then gets distorted into unease or dis-ease. So psychosynthesis really offers very practical tools actually to help us on our journey. That's where the word synthesis comes from. To sort of create a more wholesome human being, so we can grow and evolve into a better version of ourselves.
Yes, I absolutely love this concept. And as I talked to you off record about the similarities with spiritual philosophies such as Advaita Vedanta. I'm a student of Vedanta, so it's very similar. Of course, the more if we talk, you and I, more about it, we'll see the nuances, the differences, because Vedanta goes really deep into the nature of reality. But in this case, with the psychosynthesis, it's very similar. So the psychology of the self, psychospiritual, yes. And a question that I have to ask you now, I could wait for later, but I want to ask you now. What does it look like to be in alignment with the self, with the capital S, Natalie?
Oh, gosh. That's a question.
I guess that's like an ending question, right?
Yeah. Well, I think what I would actually say that one of the risk maybe that in the quest for the idea of alignment is that there's almost a quest for perfection. It's I would describe it. It's a feeling. It's a feeling of but it doesn't last, and that's partly what I feel psychosynthesis is for. It's almost imagining, that there's two directions, pulling us. So we are, there is a duality, we are spiritual beings, but we're in a human body. And therefore we also have, in our human body, we're limited, we're limited by what we can do. And there's a beginning and an end. And we always feel that tension because part of us is always longing to connect and be in alignment. And yet we also have a role here to play in our human body, and there's suffering involved. So, and we can never make that better, that will always be there. But psychosynthesis is almost a way to, I would say, maybe reduce the tension or help sort of navigate that tension a bit better. So rather than being completely extreme, you're able to flow more with it. But just to answer your question about, what does it feel to be in alignment? It's never a straight alignment. You always fall off track. For me, that's my experience.
Yes.
But this connection, the connection with self is just, and it's not, that was the biggest thing for me, coming into psychosynthesis and one of Asagioli's teachings is that this is not something, it's not like nirvana. It's not something that one day you'll be enlightened and that's it. It's a very real experience, and it's an experience that you can experience now. So for example, there's some meditations that we do. It's called identification with self. Very short, very 10 minutes, but it's a presence. So it's a real, for me, it's something I feel it in my heart. So there's an actual physical sensation of just being home. When I first experienced it, that was really the how I would describe it.
Oh,
this
wow.
feeling of, there you are. That's what I've been looking for, and it's just right there. It's inside me. I just have to.
And it has always been here. It's something.
It's always been here.
Right? It was never hidden.
Yeah.
I usually, from a spiritual perspective, I think of kind of realizing the infinite within the finite. That's whatever the experiences I have that obviously very limited, as you said, the body-mind experiences. And then I find that all the time because this is my interest. That's what the intellect is very much interested in, reflection and contemplation of truth. So, my true nature and the true nature of this experience. So I'm always reflecting on it, always. So in a way, I always kind of find that, and then you're right, it's kind of it's a feeling, but it's not, it's a very liberating feeling. It's almost a feeling of freedom itself, right? I mean, that's what it feels to me. Like, okay, I'm free, but at the same time, it feels like it's not, but it's, right.
It's often people within the psychosynthesis world, they call it this experience of nothingness, as in it's an experience of being. We would call it disidentified. So you're not identified with the content of your consciousness, your body, your thoughts, your feelings. You're in the space, but in that space, there is no thing. You're the minute you say you're a thing, or then you're identifying in the kind of human journey. So it's it's almost impossible to put words on it, because the minute you put words, but it is, I resonate with that. This feeling of freedom. It's the freedom. It's a no thing.
Yes, it's definitely a no thing. Maybe that's exactly the reason why we cannot describe it, because it's not a thing, right? We can't describe it with the mind.
But it's a no thing, but it's not nothing.
Yes.
That's the paradox. It's not nothing.
Right. In Vedanta, they call it fullness, actually. It's no thing that is full. So as you can see, the mind cannot grasp that. So it's a no thing that is at the same time full. But in the end, Vedanta clearly says that this reality is just a level of reality which is relative. There are different levels of reality. And this is like a dreamlike reality. Like the dream at night that we have, it's a level of reality. I don't know if you heard this before, but I read this recently and it was fascinating. A dream is real as long as it lasts. So the same is with life. With this, which we call life, it's real as long as it lasts. So and then there's a level of sleeping, that dream state, and then the awakening state. It's another level. And then when we just wake up for the truth that we are infinite, unlimited, unconditional, then that's a different level of reality.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what we call freedom. But we don't have to be disembodied without the body to realize that. But that's true. It's a no thing that at the same time becomes things. But then again, it's everything. So we can't separate one from the other.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a paradox.
It sounds like, Natalie, and I used to think that way, but now I don't anymore. It actually feels like it's very real. It's actually more real than the body-mind. Yeah. That reality feels a lot more real to me.
Yeah.
So I can explain why. I guess because whatever is talking to you now, it's aware of this voice, of this conversation. It's not attached to it. It's untouched by it. So it doesn't matter what happens here and with this body in mind. It's already free. Whatever it's aware of all this, it's already, it has been here, it will be here. It can never dissolve. It's always here. The closer I get to it, that's the feeling I get of freedom. Like, oh my God, I'm being free all this time and I didn't know.
Yes. Yeah. And as you say, once you know it, you cannot unknow it. You can't go back to how you used to perceive the world before. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm having a hard time. It's been a while now. Like I talked to you off record about my husband. Today he talked about his heart was heavy because his sister died 35 years ago, I believe. And then I couldn't say to him, I cannot reinforce the ignorance in a sense of ignoring the truth that we never die. So, or that we are that which just kind of is aware of what's passing, what's changing, and what dies. So I have been trying to integrate, but it's just not easy with the people around me because they are not ready, I guess. And then I'm just kind of I have fun by myself. I guess I do that. And with when I talk to people like you, my guests, we just have a lot of meaningful fun here. We go deeper into it. But let me go back to psychosynthesis. So another question that came to me is, what's the connection between, if there is a connection within the work you do, between psychosynthesis, which I know it does very much, and midlife awakening? Talk to me about the connection between those two aspects and concepts.
Yeah, so I guess, based on what I've said, there's this, self is always there and self is always seeking to express, but it needs what, psychologists would call the ego, the personality, to express itself. So it's not, the ego does serve a purpose. It's there for a reason. And, often that's what happens in the first part of our life is actually around, through childhood, teenagers, is around learning to be an individual and sort of building our own ego. And often, ego gets a bad press because it's used as a gun, we got too much ego. Yes. And actually, the ego is there. We do need to be able to function in the world if we then want to be able to serve. But what happens, and Assagioli calls it a spiritual awakening, actually a spiritual crisis. He uses the word crisis preceding. So he wrote a paper around the crisis preceding the spiritual awakening and what happens as a reaction to a spiritual awakening. And it's really, and it is often around midlife. It's when we've sort of reached a point where we are independent and we are safe. So, the ego is safe and feels safe. There's this call for more. And it's often when we realize our own mortality, when we sort of confront, okay, so is this it? I leave, I'm now going to die, so what? Is this it? And there's this, this longing for more, for something more meaningful. So, even in my own journey, I didn't name it as something spiritual. I didn't have that in my vocabulary or my knowledge. I've sort of eventually reconciled even with the word because there was some resistance to the word. But, there was this longing for more meaning, for serving, for, it's all these words around, wanting to make the world a better place, all these things that are calling you to say, that there has to be more than just me, to this search for the more than. And so he calls it a spiritual awakening. And, some of it around the crisis preceding is around this feeling of what I used to be so passionate about, my work is now meaningless. I don't losing this taste for life and sort of wondering what's happened. And suddenly from one day to the next thinking, what's wrong with me? Am I mad? What's going on? So, and it's had a lot of bad press, when we talk about midlife crisis, there's almost this feeling, they're going through a midlife crisis. They're kind of, it'll pass. And for me, it's really actually wanting to name it for what it is. It's a crisis in the sense that it's a decision point. There really is a turning point in someone's life, and far too often, actually, because it's almost seen as something like a disease, or it's the unease that you feel inside. The pull is so strong. Really, it's almost like a physical pull. That you think, I want more. There's, the heart calls to you, that if you ignore it, and if people around you are saying, oh, you're mad, you're happy, you've got a life, a job, what more do you want? And because society around us reflects that, there's a majority of that narrative, I think, more than the spiritual one. It can feel really, it can lead to depression. It can show up as depression. So one of the symptoms of the preceding spiritual awakening can be depression. And so, then you go to the doctors, you get given antidepressants, so that, you turn to numbing, let's numb the unease, as opposed to actually going through it and, really figuring out, because it is, one of the symbols of transformation, which I'm sure you know about, but, it's the butterfly.
Yes.
The butterfly shows us the transformation. Now, the butterfly comes from the caterpillar, and at some point the caterpillar has to go into the chrysalis. And inside, what happens inside the chrysalis is the caterpillar dissolves. And at some level, that's what it feels like. When you're going through that midlife, it sort of feels like you're dissolving. You don't know who you are, and it's terrifying. At some level, it's terrifying. At the level of the personality, it's absolutely terrifying. It feels like you're dying, or, but it's sort of staying with, it's for me, what I like to do in that my work, and that's the work I did through studying psychosynthesis, is if you're then able to actually put the container around you, so have the support, and that's kind of the chrysalis, so you feel safe while you're going through this complete dissolution, is that eventually you will emerge as a butterfly, but you can't, there's no way out. You can't bypass the going through it.
Wow, I love that. I was visualizing that. I'm very visual. Yeah, that sounds beautiful to me. If we can just allow the change to take place, to flow. I was just contemplating today the nature, and I love flowers. So I was just looking at a flower and thinking, the flower doesn't resist, right? It's just, it knows what it is and lets it unfolds. And then it stays here for a little bit and then dies. It goes back and does it so gracefully. But we humans resist a lot. I guess that has to do with fear. The identification you spoke earlier, it's consciousness, the self identify with the limitations. And then in a way feels so limited and is small that, and then of course from that fear arises. And then now it's kind of trying to protect itself from feeling so small.
Yes, because at that level, it's terrifying. It feels like a death. Absolutely.
Which is important in life, isn't it? We talked earlier, Natalie, about this too, before recording about, I think you mentioned the different kinds of death. The life is made up of dying moments, right? Or death. Everything dies. Even we see day and night. The day needs to die for the night to arise. And then again, the night needs to die. And then the sun. I mean, it's showing us constantly how it works, the physical reality. But for some reason, we resist to it all, and then we cause unnecessary suffering for ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's sad to hear, just listening to you now, because some people call the human condition suffering, and Buddha even said life is suffering. I kind of try not to think that way, but I guess because I'm not resisting even suffering, it's okay when it arises too, the pain and everything. I guess is resistance the main problem. Do you find that to be the main issue, the cause of suffering, fundamentally, when it comes to pain, is the resistance to it?
Partly, I think partly, yeah, there is that control, is this sort of almost this illusion. We all have an illusion of control.
Yes.
This idea that,
Yeah.
and it is, in many ways we are very powerful human beings, and in another way, at another level, we're completely powerless. So, but the ego, or wants that illusion, and the mind particularly wants that illusion of control. And when it doesn't have that, it's there's the fear there, so we resist whatever is. And often the way through, I mean, we talked about grief earlier, and to me that's partly, I mean, I talk a lot about the feminine and the masculine, and sort of being the cause. In my world, it's like this is the cause of everything. With in terms of the feminine has been split, and part of the feminine has been sort of demonized. If you think about, Eve, um, Eve and her curiosity, and she's responsible for, humanity's sin. And in the Christian religion, for example, the feminine is sort of represented by Mary, which is the mother and the virgin. But there's a whole part of the feminine, which is the powerful feminine and the sort of sexual woman. And that's sort of, and the woman who's in touch with nature and her intuition, that figure has been sort of turned into the witch. And you've got all the history of the witch hunts. And actually combined together, there's a sort of light and dark part, but that's the feminine as a whole. And my view of this is that there is one of the symptoms of this sort of feminine split, and how we've completely rejected and repressed this. I'm going to use the word dark feminine, but even I don't like the word. The sort of other side of the feminine is fear of death, is fear of change, because that's one of the symbols of that aspect of the feminine, is that understanding and total acceptance that actually life is a cycle of death and rebirth, and that it's nothing to be scared of. It's just, it's a good one. You can't just have life, life that just keeps growing and growing and growing. It's like the economy, growth. It's not healthy. It's not balanced. In the human body, it's called cancer. You need death. You need death is healthy in a way. So I feel that in the collective consciousness, if I can use that word, there is almost this this fear of death. And actually, if we were to befriend death, death is the source of life. The minute you lean into death, you find life.
Wow, I love that. That's timeless wisdom to me. Yes. Oh my God. So I mentioned resistance. You mentioned control. You added control to it, coming from egotism. Yes, the illusion that we are separate from life itself. That's it. I would love to hear more about the feminine wisdom, this kind of, powerful wisdom of not being afraid. It's almost like some people will get scared of that, facing a female or anyone with those qualities, that it's not afraid of anything, that's just very open to life, which to me is really love. That's what it is. That's how I see love. It's just being open to this adventure called life. And whatever happens, interesting. You see, a lot of people are afraid of that. They cannot even conceive the idea that fear is necessary. It's almost like keeping themselves small. It's so sad. But I didn't know that this actually, I think I have heard it before, but not the way you speak of. It has to do with the feminine energies, which has nothing to do with gender, right, Natalie, or feminism. I would love, can you clarify that, just in case?
Yeah, I mean, and I use that word because to me, it was just part of my realization. When I sort of suddenly realized that the wounded feminine, and I still want to use this word. Somehow, I don't know why, it feels important to me, even though I know that many people will hear it and will think it's about women and it's about the oppression of women and how and and to me, we need to get out of that duality. Well, there is duality, but it's more, I like the Chinese concept of yin and yang. We all have it. And I think when you describe those qualities, everybody can recognize themselves in it. So the masculine being more the qualities of, action and focus and the mind and the rational mind, whereas the feminine being more flowy and about emotions and intuition. And that was part of my realization, actually, how realizing that I was repressing, even though I'm a woman,
right.
And I'm comfortable in, I love being in a woman body, and I've never thought otherwise. And I don't feel ashamed of it. I realized that my repression was a lot more subtle. So it's almost like it was very internal. So, I don't dress in a masculine way, but inside I had beliefs such as, I had shame around emotions. So my own feelings and emotions felt, yes, they're there, but it's, and I hear it in my clients a lot, I'm too emotional. I'm too emotional. I know, like it's a problem. So that was one of the things, my intuition, the whole idea of intuition, trusting your intuition, felt wrong. It's like the rational mind, you have to think logically. That's the safe bit. The intuition's a bit suspicious. And imagination as well. Just imagining felt like a waste of time. If you're just sitting there doing nothing, you're wasting your time. You're being lazy. So I realized that this bias towards the masculine values, if you see what I mean, was, I'd integrated that. And that's a little bit what I think you mentioned the heroine's journey at the beginning. That was also a book that sort of laid it all out for me. It talks exactly about this, about the journey of the heroine, starting with a split from the feminine and an identification with the masculine values of society, of having a career, of the intellect. And that was very much me. My intellect was my strength, because in society, that's where the strength was, being a woman and being all these other feminine qualities was seen as either less important or weak, or, there was a negative clout around them. And so for me, my own journey has been around actually re-owning these qualities and seeing the beauty, not only the beauty in them, but also their power.
Yes.
So, emotions, yes, I feel, and sometimes it's painful, but how can I, that's also a blessing. And same with my intuition, my body also being into, the whole idea that actually my body tells me things. I can feel things through my body, and that's just as valid as what my mind is telling me. That was completely foreign to me, but I've learned to reclaim this, and I feel that that's what's missing. Even if I worked in the corporate world, and I just see, yes, we talk about gender equity and having more women at the top, and I think, yes, of course it's valid. But if, as women, we still sort of emulate the masculine qualities, it's only half of the job. And so for me, that's why I don't like the word feminism, because it feels somehow that it's still an ism. It's like a split, and it tends to be conflated with gender, female and male. And to me, men are just, I look in my family, and my father, my brother, my husband, even, I see the same wound there. Boys being told boys don't cry, not being able to show their emotions. That repression of the feminine is in men too. I'm not necessarily the person to talk about it, but it's there too.
Wow.
Sorry, I get very passionate when
I love that.
talk about this.
I love that. Yes, it makes sense to me. Resonates true. I mean, I'm just listening to you and kind of, oh, yes for everything, because I can see myself, I mean, in a sense of body-mind, the body-mind kind of navigating those realms and those splits, yes, duality and all that, and kind of choosing one side over the other, or overemphasizing one side. What is the antidote? What to do? You see, that's a masculine thing too, what to do. We don't want to do something to become more feminine, those qualities. But is that a matter of harmony, Natalie? Finding that harmony within ourselves, the balance per se?
Yeah.
Or
I really like the word balance. And I know because harmony, or I hear people sometimes they say, I just want peace. And unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, even balance. So my favorite word
Yeah.
actually is dynamic balance.
Yeah, I
So
love
it's never
that.
static.
Yes.
It's not,
Yeah.
there isn't this perfect equilibrium that one day, and
Yes.
I'm saying this, even as I'm saying it, I know that part of me wishes and still longs
Yeah.
for it and still probably searches for it.
Yeah.
And every now and then I'm reminded, no, it's not, it's dynamic. So, the masculine is just as useful. The mind is a beautiful tool, very powerful. Then you need the masculine, you need the masculine to take action. Otherwise, just being receptive all the time, just nothing happens. There's no growth, there's no transformation. So they really are both needed, but it's about, for me, it's been first a reclaiming of those feminine qualities, and then really working on that balance, and making space for the feminine, but also kind of relearning to love my masculine side as well. It's been in charge for so long that
Yes.
I don't want to make it the enemy.
Right.
But it's finding a dynamic balance.
Yes. I love that too. Yeah, that I have heard this idea before that really caught my attention, because we think of balance of just almost like a destination type of thing, and like static, but
Yeah.
it's not, right? We always, in a way, we need to, it's almost like going away from home just for the adventure in a forest, and then knowing the way back. To me, that would be balance to me. Like, I know how to come back.
Yeah, then the symbol for this, which I love, is that the symbol for the masculine is sort of linear. It's the arrow. It's the straight line, whereas the feminine is the sort of the circle. That's the receptive circle. And actually, when you combine them together, so you have a circle that goes in the direction of a line, you get a spiral. So it's and that's really, life is a spiral. It's never static. It's always growing. But when you're going on a spiral, you are going back. It feels like you're going back in a circle, but you'll find yourself back to where you started, but from a higher position. And somehow, even though it's the same, everything looks different.
Oh my God. I have to say that in a way. Since we start talking, every time I do the audio interview, I do the videos too. So I can't do this when I'm doing video. But when I'm doing audio interview, I'm listening to my guests. I'm doing scribbles, like doodling. And then, and then I look at it to see what's coming up, what's happening. And with you, since the very beginning, it was spires everywhere. I have been drawing them. I'm going to take a picture and send it to you. I do a mandala because I love mandalas, and then the flowers. And then I had lots of spires around the mandala.
Oh,
and
amazing.
You just said
I'd
it.
love to have a picture
I
of
will.
that.
It's like a scribble thing. It's right here. That's how amazing how everything's interconnected.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the energy is here. It's just, it knows. It really knows. Oh my God. So we almost at the end.
I know. I could talk for another hour.
I know.
Love.
Please come back so we can have a more, just expand this conversation. But let's see the other questions I had to you. I want to mention the services that you offer. So workshops, events, one-on-one coaching, feminine leadership program. So this is actually a course, I believe, development course centered around the heroine's journey. I think I found this on your website. And then you also have the I Am Remarkable workshop, Overcome Imposter Syndrome 1. I believe this is an event. Is it? Yeah, an event.
Yeah, it's a webinar as well.
A webinar too. And then Healing the Perfectionist and Setting Healthy Boundaries. So I just made a note of them here. Everything can be found on your website, and I'll have the link on the podcast notes. I have here. What is your website, Natalie? I do have it here somewhere, but please mention it.
Yeah, so it's my company's called Cordell Coaching. So the website is www.cordell, and that's CORDELL coaching.com.
Wonderful. I do have the link here, so I'll have on your podcast profile. But before we say goodbye for today, I mean, I wish I could go deeper into the conversation, but the limitations, interesting. Yeah, but even though it's limited with, we have to end, it feels timeless to me. I think that's what I look with every moment in this experience in the human body, is that the timeless, the infinite. And this feels infinite, this conversation. Like, everything disappears. And it's, and there's no ending. I don't see there's no boundaries to it. It's just so expensive to talk about these things. So thank you so much for your presence in this reality, in this relative reality.
Oh, thank you. No, it's been really a pleasure,
And then before we say goodbye for today, I do have these ending questions. I guess I'll ask you this one. Yes, what is your understanding of love these days? If you were to describe what love is, I mean, I know I mentioned what I thought it was, but what comes to mind?
I think it's everything. I think it's who we are, really, deep down. It's almost, if you want a few words, that's what I would say. It's life. Love is everything. You know, people say, money makes the world go round. I think love makes the world go round. That's just the source of everything.
Yes, beautifully said. Yes. And I guess the last question that I often ask everyone, and I'll ask you too, is this one here. What 3 experiences you wish everyone to have before they die, before they lose the body?
The experience of self. So do the 10-minute disidentification meditation. You'll actually will find it on my website under one-to-one coaching. You can sign up. Yeah, that experience of self, of home. Because what I find is that even if you don't have the mind construct or the belief around spirituality, it doesn't matter. You don't need, it's one of those things, you don't need to agree with it or to believe in it even. You can experience it. So that's that meditation of sort of experiencing self and this feeling in you.
Yes.
That's the one. But you asked for 3.
Yeah.
So
yes.
The experience of loving oneself, applying compassion to oneself. That's another one. I feel that so often that's really the key. That's something I've had to relearn, but just to be kind to oneself, to give yourself some love. Because that's really where unconditional love is. We tend to look for it outside ourselves in other people, and that can never be perfect because we're all human. So really that unconditional love is inside you. Just watch a sunset.
Yes. Very simple. Yeah, the simple things, right? Thank you so much again, Natalie, for being you, for being open to life. Thank you. It's truly beautiful. We need more flowers in the world in the form of humans.
More beauty. Indeed. Love and beauty.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. That's how I see beauty, when I see human beings uncovering themselves. Yeah, that to me is the most beautiful flower. So thank you so much again for that, for the inspiration, and we'll talk soon. Take good care of yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye for now, Natalie.
All the best.
Thank you.
Bye, Valeria.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Nathalie Cordell and her work, please visit cordellcoaching.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.